Hello there. It is that time of the month once again, or the time of the week once again, where we get on and talk about GeekSpeak. And today we are talking about getting a deeper understanding of WordPress. That's how themes and plugins, they all interact, how they interact with the core, what's the distinction between them, and how to pick the right one for the right situation.
Hey, Phelan. Did
Okay.
you already introduce yourself?
No, I hadn't. My name is
Yeah,
Phelan.
go for it. Go for it.
Yeah, my name is Phelan. I work at Seymour Digital Media, where we do search engine marketing.
And I'm Greg McKinnon with Original72Creative, and we're a full-service website graphic design and digital marketing firm in Vancouver. Yeah, as everybody knows, I've changed my year for GeekSpeak. I'm only on once a month with the wrap-up as well on the third month, and each second week I'm releasing a blog and doing the topics. So today's topic was giving a better understanding of WordPress themes and plugins and what each of them do and how each of them work together. Like, what are the differences of each, and just a more broad overall understanding of using WordPress and customizing and how everything works together. So basically, the first thing I wanted to go about was that WordPress is a content management system. It will allow you to build your site on top of, so that it gives you the functionality of maintaining your content, images, of blogs, and any features related to being able to put in that content, put in the images, build out the and things like that. So I don't know if people think of WordPress as more than that, or if they just think if they think of WordPress as everything. But in a nutshell, that's all WordPress is. It's a content management system that allows you to maintain your pages, add your content, add your images, and have an interface to go in and create all of that stuff or maintain all of that stuff within your website. I think the dogs agree.
Yeah, they're very upset with your description.
Yeah, they're like, you're completely wrong.
Like, what about WooCommerce?
Yeah.
There's WooCommerce functionality. And so they're. I think that ultimately it's a CMS where basically it has a backend that is graphically represented, and so with that, it means that someone doesn't have to write like raw code to put out a blog post. They
Yeah.
can have some sort of interface. And then that's the core functionality of WordPress. The smart part about WordPress is that it was during the aughts and the open source wars of the lamp stacks, which is like the PHP based scans, your Drupals, your Jumas. There's a fourth one that I'm forgetting, but like
Magento.
Magento's
Yeah.
still kicking around too.
Yeah, Magento's still around. Yeah, I think they're all still around.
Drupal and Joomla have been deprecated.
Oh, have they?
Yeah, because I did work on a Drupal website, no, a Joomla website, and boy howdy, has it not been updated since 2010. Oh boy, it was limited features galore. And yeah, but it comes out of that world where everyone was doing open source, and because of that, it meant that people could build off of WordPress and add some additional functionality or even different ways of having the website look like your themes and your plugins. So it opened up and built a community, which the added benefit of having open source as well is that you're not just whatever the team is. That say you work at Apple and you're fixing an Apple product. It's all the people on the internet who are adding to the code base and finding fixes and finding errors. So it meant that you're not limited to the people in a specific company. You have all the power of people on the internet who want to contribute to it. So it improves the overall product because you have so many new minds working on it, looking at it in different ways, adding new features that you wouldn't even have thought of necessarily. And so that's the big power behind WordPress.
Yeah, and a little backstory of WordPress. It was basically a blogging platform that Matt Mullenweg's picked up and forked and created and started working on what he was calling WordPress but it was an original blogging platform that he picked up and forked off of. Do you remember? I'm trying to think of what the original blogging platform might have been called. Do you recall? I should look that up.
Yeah, I know. Like, I think I can't even remember the name of it. I know some pretty esoteric names of the original companies. That's one I don't even.
And that actually, WordPress just recently, within the last year, turned 20. Like it was been around for 20 plus years now, but there was a milestone 20-year. I remember just not far back. So it's been around a long time. But essentially, WordPress itself does that basic stuff for you. It allows you to create pages in an interface without having to know HTML or CSS and stuff like that. And within WordPress, you get the themes and plugins that you can select. So WordPress on its own is a CMS. Within WordPress, then you have obviously the themes where there's a default theme, and there's been a new default theme with WordPress every year, going back from its beginning. They're typically always called whatever the year is, so like the 2024 theme, the 2023 theme. Not very exciting.
That's what you get when you get web developers naming things. Is that they're like, they're going to name it, but boy, howdy, is it not going to be creative, which is why there's 20 million SEO redirection apps that are all like redirect.
But every release of WordPress is named after a something jazz related. If it's a jazz, I don't remember if it's specifically jazz singers or just something jazz.
Yeah,
in general. They could always combine this with whichever jazz related theme this release is. They might be able to do something like that, but they do multiple releases per year, so that might not exactly work, but they could be more creative.
Yes. I mean, that's basically like every product manager at any software company is, guys, you could have been a bit more creative in your naming here. Would have been a big thing that they circle of. Yeah, but famously, like coders, like get a really creative streak on one specific thing and then don't think to apply to anything else in their naming conventions. Very common. You'll find that across the board. It's funnier when they actually do get like a proper theme, like not to go on a tangent, but like Homebrew. It's like a terminal system for Mac, and everything is like related to brewing. So you get a cask or a keg, and that's like a module that you install, and like actually kept like a proper theme and naming conventions based around like brewing. So it's fun when they actually do get that. But yeah, anyway. Yes, WordPress is, I think also one of the other parts that's interesting about WordPress is because it's from like basically the earliest period of the internet where like mass internet culture came from. It also has some inherent issues that just can't get resolved out of just the way it's situated. And it's one of those ones where they could fix it, but basically if they make a mistake, they could break a third of the internet. And so they have to very cautiously move with it and find new ways to adapt with a system that isn't really built for a lot of big changes, because there's so many people use it that you can make one too many changes and break everything.
Yeah. The other thing before moving on more with themes and eventually plugins with WordPress, I'd wanted to reiterate that there is WordPress.org and there's WordPress.com.
Oh, yeah.
And the WordPress.org is the free open source version of WordPress that anybody can download. It's free. You can install it on most any hosting provider, and everything's completely free. The default theme is in there for you as well, so you could build a completely free website with just getting hosting and a domain name with WordPress, the free theme, and any free plugins. Versus WordPress.com is a subscription service where there's a little bit more handholding and support with WordPress. So you can sign up for a WordPress.com account and then do the exact same thing you can with the .org, but they do have that support. So you can chat with someone or you can call them and ask questions, but it's also completely do it yourself if you want to do it. But you do have that behind you, because the free version, you're on your own, right? Like you can take it, you can do whatever you want. for free. But if you need help, you're either going to a free WordPress community on Facebook or something like that to try to get information on something that might have gone wrong, or have a guy like yourselves or myself who know WordPress. People can come to a web developer and be like, oh, I have this site, I need help. Sure, no problem, and do it that way. Where the WordPress.com is a paid service. You pay, you get your hosting, you can build your site, and they also have support to give you a hand with whatever it is that you might need. And they have tiered levels. Obviously, if you want a basic blogging site, it's probably pretty cheap. And then if you want to do like e-commerce or more advanced business sites, they have levels that you could go up to, which give you a little bit more functionality, features and functionality. So I wanted to make sure people knew that distinction between WordPress.org and WordPress.com.
Yeah. And I'm just going to say for the record, avoid WordPress.com like the plague.
Yes.
I
agree.
just like, it is torture. It is because you cannot access all the plugins that are on WordPress.org on WordPress.com.
That's right. It's a more strict, which looking at it could be good because, as I'll mention later on when we get to plugins, there are plugins that are really bad. So
100%.
they give you access in there to limited number of plugins that they've deemed to be reputable and good and serve very specific functionality and stuff like that. But it's not the type of thing where you have your own your self-hosted WordPress and you can just install whatever you feel like.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying for the record, just to let people know, like I'm not speaking for you, Greg. I'm just speaking for myself. My official stamp is avoid WordPress.com because you will pull your hair out. At one point, you will get to something and go, "What do you mean I can't do that thing?" And it's just going to be a weird, arbitrary part where they're just like, "No, actually, we decided that you can't do that."
I completely agree. I think it's a better. Obviously, this would be a plug for coming to have me help you with your site, but I would definitely recommend having a go-to guy who you can trust and knows WordPress, that if you have an issue, you have them to fall back and say, oh, hey, Greg, I'm having trouble with this, and this is wrong with my site. Just having someone in the community or having a developer who's been doing it for a long time behind you to give you a hand when you're trying to do it yourself, but then get stuck is really good. And there's tons of WordPress people out there.
Yeah.
It is not hard to find a person who knows WordPress.
Yeah. And that's another thing I'd also say is just like a quick vote of building off of that before we jump in. I talked about it earlier. Having a system that's popular is a good thing because it means that if you have to fire your guy or something happens to them and they disappear off the face of the earth, you can get a new person in and they will ostensibly have some way of not only fixing it, but being able to reach out to more people. So it's actually having a large community of using a specific piece of software is good for hiring people. It's good for knowing how to search for problems. Like it just makes your life easier the more popular system is.
Okay, so a little more on themes, and we touched on the free default theme is always available in WordPress, which you can use. It's a block-based theme now because they're moving towards the block-based builders, but there's a really big repository of free themes that are in there to choose from. It's about choosing the right one, choosing the one that is at most up to date, because themes are built like a theme that was built even 2 or 3 years ago might not have some of the things that are designed and built more in the last year. So my suggestion for people when looking for themes is try to find themes that are being updated regularly, for one, and have a lot of downloads. Just like WordPress, if a theme is the more widely used it is, the more easily you might be able to find someone who knows the specific intricacies of that theme if you needed help. So there's the free theme option, or As well, there's paid themes, paid pro themes from a lot of developers where you can find them on places like Theme Forest or other theme shops. But again, when you're looking through those, check when they were made. Check how often they're updated to make sure you're choosing a theme that works for you and will work for you in the future. And then in the repository, there's also what I refer to as highly customizable framework themes, which again, they're free, but they might have a paid tier to them for a pro version of it. But they typically have a free version with a lot of basic stuff that you would need. And they're very customizable. Again, I can't reiterate enough. Always check how often they're updated, that they're being maintained actively, and that they have a pretty good download volume to indicate how well or how popular the theme might be. Above all of that, you can just customize and build your own theme from scratch. That typically would be done if you went to a company or a person like myself and you really wanted a theme that was custom built to the exact thing that you need for your business. But for that scenario, you're really talking about a much larger budget of 3 to 5 or more $1,000 initially to get something designed and built out for that. And it's becoming more and more, I feel, something that massive businesses are doing because of the popularity of these free theme frameworks and how customizable they are. People can really go in and make pretty amazing sites for a much better value than doing something for custom. Not to mention the fact that a custom site, once it's done and it doesn't change, if something needs to be upgraded, you have to go back to the developer, have them fix the theme or do whatever you want, build something back into that theme that wasn't there last year. That is a new thing in WordPress, for instance. Whereas these highly customizable theme frameworks, they're actively being updated by the developers. So when you get those updates to that theme, you're getting the new things that are available within WordPress or the new trends design or web design or things like that.
Yeah, as well as another one I'd like to touch on why it's important to make sure it's up to date is security. PHP is notoriously one of the most insecure coding languages. Like you ask it anything, it will try to give you a SQL injection and tell everyone the database of passwords. Like so keep that in mind as well. Anytime you do any customizations that are like specialty, we're dealing with this right now with another website that they had it customized, and it's just been a pain to get it to talk to plugins, which I know we're going to touch on because the interactions now are like customized, and so the plugin got updated, but that update meant that how it responded didn't work with the customization, so then they had to go back. And maintenance is definitely going to be a difficult one, so bear that in mind, that you have how maintainable is it in the long term. And I always recommend, for just kind of future proofing, leave as few customizations as you need, because the more that you use within what they gave you with a theme or a plugin, the easier it's going to be in the future, because someone else is hopefully maintaining those two things and keeping it up to date with the core. And so it's just going to be, you can flow along with what's already existing within it, rather than try to build something specialty and then it just over time it'll just be this weird little sore in your website of having to maintain it and keeping it working regularly.
Definitely. And that gets tricky sometimes when people have themes and they start customizing them a little bit too much. And then the theme has an update and you do the updates. If you didn't do those customizations in a certain way, when you update that theme, it's possible you can lose the customizations that you did. Again, depending on how you made those customizations. I'll touch on that maybe a little bit when we talk about plugins. But essentially, the theme, think of it only as what styles your site, how you set up your navigation, the look of where your logo is, your colors, your fonts, your overall layout, your footer, that kind of a thing is really what you're achieving with your theme. The theme itself does have certain functionality related to styling and design, but don't think of the theme as something you need to add functionality. Oh, I want to add a way for my customers to be able to do this. Don't build functionalities of whatever feature you think you need into the theme. And let's move into plugins. And the reason why plugins are there is exactly for what I was just describing, was to add the functionality and features that you might be missing from what you get in WordPress core functionality, like being able to send through contact forms, being able to perform SEO on your pages, being able to add e-commerce to your website to sell products. These are all accomplished through plugins. And there's a massive, just like there's a big repository for themes, there's an even bigger repository for full of plugins that are all features that you can add to your site should you have that need to add some type of functionality that you've defined.
Yeah, and it goes back to that open sourceness where someone in the audience finds like, hey, there's one that I use all the time, Contact Form 7. And while that's being built, other people built connectors for the Contact Form 7. So it's, I want it to reach out to the Google Sheets and I want it to store it when someone fills up my form, it goes there as well. So it's like people building off of even what other people are thinking. And so it adds a lot. And it's usually, yeah, like you said, it's more functionality, right? It's a lot more the PHP coding of a specific thing is going to happen. And then it does some logical programming where it like does, say a person comes to a website and then 5 seconds later, I want a pop-up to show up. And it's going to say X, Y, and Z. If they fill it out, sends it to my email marketing platform. Like that kind of stuff where it's not core of the styling, like you said, or the layout. It's more just, I need my website to do an extra thing. And again, you also want to make sure, same as the themes as well, make sure it's popular. They have now a compatibility feature as well, which is nice. Is it compatible with my version of WordPress, which is it's a nice thing, a little touch for security, because I think a lot of us have been seeing that we've had a lot of day one issues, or they call them day one bugs. So it's something that they didn't even know was necessarily a security issue, and there's been a couple of those. And so that definitely you want to make sure it's maintained and up to date and works with your website, because even more so than a theme, anything that's involving the PHP is more directly than like style, which is more like CSS and HTML, which does like layout and styling. It makes it more dangerous, basically, for your security of your website.
So now that we know a little bit more about what you do with your theme and what you would do by adding plugins to extend functionality, one of the things I wanted to get across to people is the reason why you want to keep these distinctions to keeping your theme as what looks like only without functionality being added to the site, and why plugins are important to add that functionality versus actually building it into the theme, is for the upgrade path. Like we already touched on earlier, if you have a theme and it gets updated and you've built things into the theme, then you might lose those customizations, whether it's visual or feature related. So keeping the features within plugins only gives you an easier upgrade to when you, a couple of years down the road, you're like, I don't really look at my site anymore. I'm going to switch themes. Switching themes now becomes much easier, because when you choose a new theme, you just have to deal with the new styling and set it up. You're not going to lose any functionality of your site, because all of that is driven from the plugins that you've chosen. And I've seen many times people build certain things into their theme, and then when that theme gets switched out for something, they're like, I don't have the ability to do this anymore. So, yeah, because it was built into the theme and you changed it for something else. So now you lost that on your site. So that's the important reason why you want to know the distinctions between each and make sure that you use each for what its core purpose is, so that you don't possibly run into that type of a situation in the future.
Yeah, definitely. I know that, like, I've run into it many times where I had to tell someone, did we need to code this? Is there another way we could have done this with the tools that have already been built? Because like you said, it's easier migrating. It's also like easier if someone needs to change it. And if you wrote it all in code and then someone who doesn't know code has to come along and change it, like all of a sudden it just opens up so many new avenues for things to go wrong for people that is just not, it's just not beneficial long term for this, for anyone who's maintaining the website. There's also like whoever wrote the code may have wrote like a little snippet in there. You don't understand why they picked those things. So then new web developer comes along and has to figure out like, that's a weird way they did that. And they may have chosen a reason, but they left no notation, like no way to identify it. And so it's going to be one where you're going to run into those issues. One other thing I wanted to say as well, I know Greg, you're big on this one as well for the performance of your WordPress website. Don't just add plugins because they look nice. Keep the number of plugins you have at exactly the amount you need. Don't have duplicates. This one WordPress website that I'm dealing with has this issue where there's 30 or 40 plugins and a bunch of them are doing the same thing and migrating to a new WordPress website, but it's just the performance it's being very negatively impacted because it has so many things that it's doing duplicates of, and it's just a nightmare. And they're all
the more plugins you have, the more resources that your site might be loading. If it's got CSS or JavaScript or whatever it is that plugin needs to function, all of those things need to be additionally loaded. So it weighs down your page load speed. As far as performance, though, you theoretically could have a lot of plugins with a site that runs just as fast as one with one or two. It's really more based on how well the plugin has been coded, because that's really what weighs it down. The additional resources do play a little bit of a role, but if there's a call to the database or something's not programmed right, if it's just like a weighted down plugin, that would be what would more substantially cause your site to become slow. So for that reason, you always want to make sure that you're looking for plugins, again, that have a lot of downloads, that are being actively updated, and that have a really good star rating. You should be pretty good to go. But again, like you said, the more you install, the more possibility that there is of you having that issue. So try not to install things for a little, the smallest of functionalities, when there's probably other solutions of being able to get that in the site.
Yeah, exactly. And so with that, I think we're going to have to call it there today. I think we learned a bit more about how WordPress works together. And of course, we know what next week is going to be.
Is Rena back with us next week?
Yes, I believe that she is. And so I think we are doing quickly looks over at Banner.
Oh, it's SEO and YouTube optimization
With Pip and I.
Yes.
So that should be a lot of fun, and I'll see you next week with that. And I think we mentioned it over the weekend, but we are also doing a live teaching on our Know How Marketing Lab YouTube channel about Google Business Profile. Pip's going to teach you all the ins and outs of that. So,
Fun.
Yeah. So it should be good. I have to go to make sure that we are ready for that, though.
Oh, is that happening like now? Next?
In an hour, so I need to make sure everything's working.
Cool. I might have to try to tune in a little bit for that.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll post a link to that as well when we go live. All right. Bye.
All right. Nice, Phelan. Thanks, everybody, for watching.